the directory structure of a Symfony project. You have an app folder, a bin folder, an SRC folder, a vendor folder, and a web folder. The app folder, that contains project configuration files and scripts. It contains log files, and it contains cache. Okay, resources, views, Symfony standard. I'll just say it. The app folder is for project configuration files and scripts, log files, cache files, and the cache files can be dev or production. Okay, there's the production. So this is cache. Now the SRC folder, that's where custom project PHP code would go. In other words, that's like where my code would go. And it's supposed to be empty. I'm not sure why there's something in here. I think this is some test code that they put in here for me. Not test code, but stuff, to get me started. Now, the vendor folder, this one, that's for third-party dependency files and Symfony components. Finally, there's the web folder. This is where the web root would be. It's the directory where Apache would point to. And it contains all the files that I would want a web browser to be able to access through Apache. That's like CSS, picture files, stuff that doesn't have information that can be used to hurt my web app. It also contains the front controllers. Let me show you here. Okay, this is a front controller, and that's a front controller. This one is for the development environment, this one is for the production environment. There's also config.php, and that is used by people who install Symfony without using Composer, because Composer can do the same configuration setup that config.php does. Config.php does a few extra things like checking your environment to see if there's any problems with it and giving you advice. However, there's another script that can do similar things. It's called check.php, and that's in the app folder. The difficulty I've found with using config.php is you're supposed to run it in the browser, but you can only run it locally. So the only way that could have worked would have been if I was using the Apache on my Mac to access these files. But when I access my source code, my project, through a web browser, I'm actually accessing it from the Mac to the virtual machine. So that is not considered being local. And that is why this config.php, I can't really run it. There's got to be a workaround for that, but I don't know what it is at this point. Now, what's a front controller? Okay, these two are the front controllers. It's the main controller which handles the HTTP request. In MVC, there's only one script which is called every time there is a request from the web app, and that's the front controller. Remember I said that config.php can only be accessed locally? Well, it's the same story with appdev.php. So I'm not sure how I'm going to overcome that problem. So we have a dev environment, we have a production environment. There's also something called a testing environment, or a test environment. And there is no front controller for that because the testing is done at the command line. It doesn't require a web server. Config.php checks requirements for the framework to see, it basically checks your environment to see if you have everything that's needed. And it can generate configuration files, but we took care of that with the Composer. In the next video, we're going to set up NetBeans to start doing some work.